I've kept my feelings to myself for 94 years. And now I'm almost out of time. If you're watching this late at night, maybe in your 30s or 40s, scrolling with the volume low so you don't wake anyone, I want to say this before I go. Because there's a chance this could be your story too, if you're not careful. My name is Walter Green. For 42 years, I was a janitor at the same high school. Same long hallways. The same mop bucket rolling over the same tile floors. The same ring of keys, metal worn smooth, from decades of turning locks that belonged to everyone else. I was a quiet man. Still am. People called me steady, dependable. The kind of person you didn't notice until something needed to be cleaned up, fixed, put back in order. I liked routine. Lunch at the same time. The bleach on the same aisle. The one classroom light that always flickered when the weather turned cold. Order made the world feel manageable. I wasn't the type to make speeches. I showed up, did what needed doing, and went home without leaving much behind. When I was 24, I married a girl named Eileen. She had a laugh that made other people look up, even in crowded rooms. She could make a plain kitchen feel warm just by standing in it. 2 years later, we had one son, Peter. I never raised my voice, never broke a promise, never came home drunk or late. I paid the bills on time. I fixed the sink when it leaked. I drove carefully. I thought that was what love looked like. I thought that was enough. Last spring, my great-granddaughter mailed me a birthday card. She's 7. Her name is Ellie. The envelope was covered in crooked handwriting letters, still learning how to stand up straight. I sat at the small table by the window, the same table I've eaten at for years, and opened it slowly. The front said, "Happy birthday, Great-Grandpa." And down, inside, it was blank, just her name at the bottom in messy letters. No message, no drawing, just empty space. It shouldn't have bothered me. She's 7. But I stared at that empty space for a long time, because it felt familiar, like a conversation that never started, like standing in the doorway of your own life and realizing how little of it you've actually spoken aloud. For the first time, I wondered what she knew about me. Not what I did. Not the job title. Not the facts people can repeat. But me. What I've felt. What I've carried. What I've held back. And I started thinking about the biggest lie I ever believed. If you don't say it, they already know. Oh, I thought Eileen knew. I thought Peter knew. I thought love could be understood through actions alone, through the steady way you show up, through the things you fix, through the promises you keep. I thought words were optional. Turns out, people can't read between the lines forever. I don't know when I started holding back. Maybe I always did. My father was a silent man. Worked in the rail yards. Came home with soot on his hands, read the paper, fell asleep in the chair. I never once heard him say, "I'm proud of you." And so I assumed that's just how men were supposed to love. Quietly, indirectly, without making it obvious. I was kind. I showed up. I kept things running. But I rarely said what mattered. When Peter got accepted into college, I shook his hand. I didn't hug him. When Eileen made an awful roast on our 30th anniversary, I smiled through every bite, but I never told her how much I loved the way she tried. And there were good moments, 2 small ones I kept like coins in my pocket. Peter at 8, sitting at the table with glue on his fingers, holding up a crooked paper aeroplane like it could fly forever. Eileen humming while she washed dishes, her shoulders moving with the tune, filling the house with something gentle I never named out loud. Once, I remember her folding a scarf in the hallway, her fingers smoothing the fabric back and forth. She looked up and asked, "Why don't you ever tell me how you feel?" I looked at her, opened my mouth. then closed it again. The only sound was the old clock ticking on the wall. And in my head, the same thought returned, steady as always. She knows. That's what I told myself again and again, like a prayer I didn't have to speak. I thought my silence was restraint, respect. I thought if I kept my feelings tucked away, I was sparing the people I loved from something messy or embarrassing. But silence doesn't stay neutral. It doesn't just leave a gap, it starts to write the story for you. At first, it was small. A compliment I swallowed. A thank you I assumed was obvious. A hug that felt unfamiliar in my arms. Then it wasn't small anymore. Eileen stopped asking after a while. Peter grew into his own life, and I stayed the steady background, the man who fixed things and nodded and kept his voice low. And then the spaces between us grew wider. I remember the first night Eileen slept in the guest room. It wasn't a dramatic fight. No slammed doors. No shouting. That almost would have been easier, because at least it would have been sound. It was late autumn. The air in the house had that dry, heated smell, like dust warming on old vents. I was in my chair by the lamp, reading the same page of the newspaper over and over without absorbing a word. Eileen walked past me carrying a pillow. Just a pillow. Her footsteps were soft on the carpet, but I heard them anyway. I always heard her, even when I pretended not to. She paused at the doorway and said, very quietly, "I'm going to sleep in there tonight." And her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. In her hand, she held a small object, her wedding ring, slipped off and resting in her palm like something too heavy to wear. The gold caught the lamplight for a second, a dull glint, then disappeared as her fingers curled around it. I stared at that ring. My throat tightened. I could have said her name. I could have asked why. I could have stood up, crossed the room, taken her hand, told her not to go. Instead, I stayed in the chair. The newspaper trembled slightly between my fingers, the thin paper crackling in the silence. I could hear the clock in the hallway ticking, each second loud as a footstep. Eileen waited. Just a moment. Her eyes searched my face like she was looking for something she'd misplaced years ago. Then she nodded once, almost to herself, and turned away. The guest room door clicked shut down the hall. That sound was small, but it echoed. I sat there with the lamp buzzing faintly above me, smelling the cold air that slipped in under the windows, feeling the weight of words I hadn't said pressing against my ribs. The house felt different with her on the other side of a closed door. Not empty, just muted. That night, staring at the dark hallway, I began to understand what silence really was. Not gentleness, not strength, just absence. And absence, given enough time, becomes its own kind of message. Years passed like that quietly. Eileen moved back into our room eventually, but something had shifted, like a picture hung slightly crooked that no one ever straightened. Peter grew older. He married, divorced, tried again. He had daughters of his own. He called me less often, not out of cruelty, but because life fills up with noise, and the quiet relationships are the easiest to leave unattended. Then one afternoon, the phone rang. It was a sharp sound in the kitchen, cutting through the hum of the refrigerator. I remember the smell of dish soap on my hands, the way the sunlight fell across the linoleum floor. A voice on the other end said, "Mr. Green?" I said yes. There was a pause, and then, "It's about your son." Oh, the words didn't make sense at first. They floated, disconnected, like hearing someone speak underwater. Car accident. 52 years old. Gone. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was staring at the edge of the table, my fingers gripping it so hard my knuckles turned white. The funeral came days later, wrapped in grey weather. The air outside the church smelled like wet wool and cold rain. People spoke in hushed voices, their condolences drifting toward me like smoke. I brought an object with me, tucked inside my coat pocket. An old photograph. Peter in 8th grade, hair too long, holding a spelling bee trophy like it was made of gold. His grin was wide and unguarded, the kind of smile you only have before the world teaches you to hide parts of yourself. I kept that photo pressed flat against my chest the entire service. When the pastor spoke, his words blurred together. When relatives cried, I stood still. My hands stayed in my pockets, the photograph warm from my body heat, the paper edges worn soft from years of being handled in secret. At one point, Peter's oldest daughter stepped close to me. Her eyes were red. Her voice shook when she whispered, "Grandpa, did he know? Did Dad know you were proud of him?" The question landed like a stone. I could smell the lilies near the casket, too sweet, almost nauseating. I could hear the faint creak of pews as people shifted. I could feel the photograph against my palm, proof of everything I'd held inside. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Silence, again. Her face changed in that moment just slightly. Not anger, not blame, just something settling, like a door closing softly. She nodded, stepped back, and the space between us filled with everything I couldn't say. That was when it hit me, cold and undeniable. Love doesn't travel by assumption. If you don't speak it, people don't feel it, they guess at it. And eventually, it becomes too late. So if you're watching this late at night, volume low, thinking about the people in your life, your wife in the next room, your kid growing up faster than you notice, your friend you haven't called in months, listen carefully. Do not make my mistake. Do not assume they know. Do not confuse silence with strength, because silence will be interpreted. Absence will be answered. People will fill in the blanks with their own fears. Say the thing while you still can. Say it clumsy. Say it awkward. Say it today while the door is still open. And when you're done, send the message. Write the note. Put words in the empty space. Because here is the warning no one wants to hear. You don't run out of love. You run out of time. In the end, people don't remember what you fixed. They remember what you never said. And when time is gone, silence is all anyone can quote you on.